What's up, business owners and entrepreneurs? Check out my guest appearance on the Mondays with Mike podcast featuring the great Mike Martinez. Man, we go over so much to share for hitting your revenue targets, setting KPIs, trials and tribulations of me running a call center and managing 2 six-figure companies while working a full-time job, how to build and manage a virtual team, and so much more so that you guys can go out and take actionable next steps in your business today. Just make sure you guys slam the like and subscribe button on this episode, and make sure you guys also check out Mondays with Mike Martinez.
You are now listening to Mondays with Mike Martinez.
Hey guys, welcome back to another exciting episode of Mondays with Mike. I'm joined by my friend here, Kyle Connor. He is making a wave in the real estate wholesale space, but most importantly, the cold calling call center space. So I'll let you introduce yourself, Kyle. Welcome to the show. Thanks for flying all the way out from Miami. I really appreciate you being here with me, man. So let's talk about a little bit about yourself, man. Where are you from originally, and how was life growing up?
Yeah, Mike, first off, thanks for having me, man. Super excited to be here. So grew up in the Northeast. I'm a bit of a Northeast mutt. Grew up in Connecticut, come from a very blue-collar family, and decided to go to school in Boston. And lived there for 10 years and then met my wife, who was born and raised in Guadalajara, Mexico, and we wanted to get closer to home. So she said, hey, do you want to move to Miami 2 years ago? And I said, Miami, absolutely. You say jump, I say how high. So we went to some warmer pastures, and that's where I came from. But my parents are still living in Connecticut. My brother and sister are still up in Boston.
So when you say blue collar, does that mean you grew up around money, or middle class, not so?
Yeah, middle class. I mean, my parents taught me how to basically trade time for money, and that was something that I learned how to work hard, understood discipline at a very young age. I've been working since I was 15. My first job was a yard hand, right? So I got to be around a lot of rich people when I was young, cleaning boats, bug zappers, the yard.
Oh, wow.
So, I would see all these rich people coming in, and I'm like, you know what, I will do whatever I can to be there one day. And so that was, from a very young age, I just was working hard, but I had to really invest time and money into figuring out how to work smart. Right, and that's stuff we'll get into in a little bit about my education side. But
let's hop into it.
Yeah.
I know offline we talked a little bit about it,
yeah.
And I get people from all walks of life here. Right. I got people from, I never even finished elementary school to people that have master's degrees.
Yeah, we did talk about that. And for me, I was a sports management major. And when I was young, I was like, what do you want to do after school? And I was an athlete by trade. I played a little college basketball, and, naturally I just wanted to be around sports. But when you pay for school and the loans start stacking up and you realize sports management degrees don't pay much, $40K, $50K jobs a year, I was like, shoot, I really need to figure this out. And I want something bigger for myself. So I stayed at school at Endicott College, got my MBA there. And it's nice to have that on the resume for sure. But now going through owning 2 businesses, I'm starting to learn a lot more of my MBA lessons that I learned in school now. So it's all applicable now, which is helpful. But yeah, it was very helpful for me to go through the MBA process, because that was my first introduction to doing projects in school where I was building companies, like fake companies at the time, but I just always had the idea of I want to own something one day. I want to build something on my own. And that was just a fire in me that I've always had from a young age.
Just sidetracking really quick, and it wasn't on the agenda, but I think it's an interesting topic. Dude, what do they teach you in business school? What kind of stuff do you learn when you get a master's degree in business administration?
So we did a lot. It was interesting because it was the first year that Endicott had launched that program. So they, were sort of building some of the things as we were going. But I remember, a lot of case studies. We were doing a lot just around, some of the major businesses. TJ Maxx is a big company in Massachusetts. So I remember doing some fun stuff around just, trials and tribulations of these big enterprise companies that you just hear their stories from the ground up. And a lot of it was just building the foundation, right? Understanding, how to read, financial reports, and I think that definitely giving you some guidance on, just basic business management principles. But after that, it was sort of, you got to figure it out on your own, right? And you had it really, at the time they weren't really giving you a plan as far as the next steps of, hey, we've given you this MBA program. Here's some good job opportunities and job fairs that we had that came from it, but I told this to you offline. I said, I wish I got my MBA after I got in the working world a little bit. I wish I had that experience, because a lot of the lessons that I learned, I'm now applying and having to relearn again, actually.
It sounds like they teach you how to analyze a business.
Correct.
rather than build one, right?
Exactly.
They don't teach you how to be an entrepreneur.
Definitely
They
not.
just teach you how to look at a business and understand, kind of what's going on in there,
Correct.
but not how to operate it. So they don't teach you sales.
No.
They don't teach you marketing.
No.
That's a whole different major. They don't. Do they teach you operations?
I mean,
KPIs, metrics, calendars.
no, not really. I think it's because, again, think about this, kind of what's screwed up with the education system, right? A lot of these people that are teaching me, many of them hadn't come from owning or operating a business, right? It was, as I talked about, a lot of case studies, a lot of high level stuff.
Yep.
And that's great and all, but until you actually get in the weeds in the day to day, like that's where you really start to grind it out. And yeah, I think there's a lot of things that we could have changed with the education system.
And
but
this is why I went to Cardone Ventures.
Right.
Whenever we're at the events or whenever we're at a training, my wife always puts, I'm in real business school right now, because they're teaching us real stuff that
Correct.
applies to building a business, and I'm not talking about building a small business. I'm not talking about, a small market or liquor store on the corner of a street. I'm talking about building a massive company with hundreds of employees doing, $100 million a year.
Right.
And I always come back to the basics of what they teach: sales, marketing, operations, leadership, human resources, which is people, running teams,
Right.
Revenue, and finance. Those are the things that they teach, right? So we come back to that. So I was just curious, people that have bachelor's degree in business or
my
master's degree, MBAs, like the fuck they teach you guys?
Nothing. I mean, it feels like nothing because of, what I would have done. You made a really good point just about the power of mastermind programs. If I could go back, and when we have kids someday, it's like, we're not going to go get an MBA at a college. We're going to put you in a couple of really good mastermind programs, because that's where you're really going to get the education. That's where you're really going to get from the real players and the real playmakers. So,
yeah, I've been traveling, but I stopped coaching for a year and a half. It just wasn't working out for me. I didn't like it. I mean, I did, but it wasn't worth it for me, right? So I'm just launching an NFT right now in the next week or so, where it's basically a 10xer NFT. It's 10 grand, and these people are going to be in my community. I'm going to be coaching them, and I'm going to have an annual mastermind exclusive only for the NFT holders.
Amazing.
So I'm going to make it real fun, but that's going to be announced shortly. But that's my whole objective, is to teach them all these pieces that go into running a business. And we talked about it offline right now, and we'll get into it in a minute. But to get to your first $1 million, I mean, you need to know the basics.
right.
If not, you can get there, but it's going to be a struggle, and it's going to take you long. So
I had to pay 20 grand for my MBA. So it's like, that
20 grand?
It's about, I got some really good financial aid. I think it was somewhere around like 27, give or take, in the middle after the financial aid hit. But, you think about your program, right? I would pay 10 grand all day if I got the resources.
yeah, I mean, I paid 1.3 million already up to this point in mentors and coaches, and like, what do you get from that?
Right.
I've already fucking 10x my money. You know what I mean?
Not
Like,
to mention the relationships you get.
oh, dude,
Power of proximity, right?
I mean, if I really needed to call Brandon Dawson right now, I could. Grant's a little harder to get to. I'm sure I can swing it, but Brandon Dawson's just a phone call away if I needed him.
I mean, that's $150 million.
And I got the whole executive team in my arsenal right now at Cardone Ventures. Like Eddie, shout out to Eddie, the CFO. Jeremy, the chief marketing officer. I mean, their whole team over there is amazing. If I really needed them, they're just a call, an Instagram message away.
And I'm sorry, but that doesn't happen going to getting your MBA at a university.
Yeah, that
Sorry.
sucks. Well, I had to pay a lot of money for those relationships.
Yeah, exactly.
But dude, so let me ask you, I know we talked about, you wholesale real estate. I got a lot of people in real estate that follow me because, I wholesaled for a long time. We still do. My wife still runs a wholesale business, in case you guys were wondering.
Nice.
And then the call center.
Right.
Like, that's my wheelhouse, that's my shit.
Absolutely.
So, what was your revenue last year in these two businesses?
So
How long have you been in business, first of all?
So we just celebrated our 4-year anniversary on April 21st.
Okay.
Yeah. So my wholesale business I opened up in 2019.
Okay.
All right. It took us 9 months to close our first deal, and actually very quickly, Grant was one of my first, mentors, I should say.
That's right.
To get me excited. I was doing the podcast, YouTube University thing. I mentioned that I was working in cybersecurity software sales. My company went public when I was 25. I was very lucky. I got, $33,000 of equity that I was able to use, and at the time I was just like, what do rich people do? They own real estate, right? And so I was doing a lot of the YouTube podcast thing, and then finally just used some of that money to start my wholesale business. And that's how I got into wholesaling. Took me 9 months to close my first deal.
Wholesaling single family, right?
Single family and multifamily. Actually, the first deal.
Multifamily too, huh?
Well, I was in Boston. My first deal I ever did was a duplex. You never forget your first deal.
Yeah.
So that first deal made us $21K. Took us 9 months to get there. But the light bulb moment and what got me into running a call center was I hired my first VA 9 months in. It was no coincidence that 3 months later I closed my first deal. Why? Because my brother and I, we were running, doing our own W-2.
Yeah.
We didn't have time to make calls during the day. And we were just smiling and dialing with a prop stream list doing this manually. And my brother and I like, dude, this isn't working. We got to figure out a better way.
Yeah.
So we hired that VA. Voila, that VA gets us our first deal, 21K. Like, okay, that's now you're hungrier.
A magic sauce right there.
And then everything just started to open up with the VA world, right? And that's how the call center came about.
I have a similar story. When I got into wholesaling real estate, I was dialing manually, kind of the same way. I had my skip tracing tools from my collection agency.
Yep.
So I already owned my agency. So I had my skip tracing tools, and I would pull a list on PropStream, and I was skip tracing and I was manual dialing. And I'm like, dude, this is gonna take me forever to find a seller.
Right.
It's gonna take me forever.
Not enough time in the day.
So then I pulled the list from PropStream. I skip traced it through another skip tracing vendor that the real estate industry used. And I got the results back and it was all disconnected, wrong numbers. I'm like, oh, hell no, right? I'm like, dude, why am I using them?
Yeah.
If I own a collection agency, I have my own skip tracing, right?
Right.
And I had credit bureaus. I still do credit bureau stuff, right? So then that same list, I re-skipped it through my skip tracing. And I connected I already had a predictive dialer with my collection team using it overseas. So I connect the predictive dialer and I just start smacking through foreclosures. Smacking through them, bam, bam, bam. And I start getting people, yeah, I'm thinking about it. I'm not ready yet. Cool. That's a lead. That's a lead. That's a lead.
Right.
Putting it in Podio. So I had a I took a freaking beating, dude. Imagine, I'm making, I don't know, 300 to 400, 500,000 a year with my collection agency, and I'm fucking cold calling, bro.
That's crazy. That's crazy to me.
You know what I mean? Well, and by the way, that was my net.
Right.
That's what I was making. That wasn't my revenue was like 10, maybe 8 million back in those days. So, but I had to learn the hard way. So that way, when I find success, I can teach somebody else how to do it.
I was going to ask, like, what was it? Why did you decide to do that on your own?
I had to learn, I have a collection agency with 120 collectors. Like, I need to know how to close a deal. I haven't in over 12 years. I haven't gotten on the phones. But if I had to talk to a debtor right now and convince them to pay, I could.
Right.
It would be too easy, Luckily, I don't have to. I have a huge team to do it.
Right.
But you got to learn how to practice what you preach.
Correct.
So let's get back to your revenue last year.
Yes.
So right. But they're two businesses. They're wholesaling and call center.
Correct.
So what was
the
your
call
revenue?
center did 327,000, roughly around 327,000. And then the wholesale business did about 225.
Cool. So you're at about 550,000 in revenue.
Correct.
Okay. Now, do you know what your net was last year?
Yeah. So the net was for my call center, I only took home $3K. Right. We pumped everything we had back into the business. I was working a full-time job. I didn't stop going, or I started going to my businesses in July of 2024. So I had built my companies, right? They're 4 years old. For the first really 3 years of those companies being in operation, I had the comfort of a W-2, or my first business partner, I like to say, was my W-2, right? And then to go over to my wholesale business, again, we did 225 and we netted about 90. So not a ton of money from both businesses.
Yeah,
especially,
but good old wholesaling, you can always count
I know,
on it.
exactly.
That's similar to, no, our numbers were different last year. Wholesaling, I think we did like 700K.
Wow.
And we netted like 270.
Okay. So
I don't know Natalie's exact numbers because I stepped out in October. I didn't even look at her finances.
Right.
But I know she was profitable.
Yeah.
She was like shy of 300 because her profit margin was 27%. So what is that? It's probably like 225, something like that from the 700K.
Right.
But Natalie operates that business all virtual, and she's literally like maybe spends an hour a day on it.
Yep.
If that, and then we travel a lot. So that business literally runs itself. I don't know what her numbers are. I don't babysit that company anymore. It's all hers. but I'm hoping she does at least $500,000 this year.
Yeah,
like
that's
on
what we're shooting
autopilot,
for.
you know.
Yeah.
But this year, you know, and I know you had your job,
Yep.
right? When did you leave that?
Officially, well, I got fired. I told people I retired, but I got fired really. And it was just a company that was going through some growing pains, and it was I had a lot of flexibility. I was working a remote job, living in Miami, making probably 10, 12 grand a month through my cybersecurity job, and not working many hours, right? It gave me the flexibility to build my companies. But, you know, getting fired and then going into these businesses, it opened up a lot of, you know, gaps. Obviously, I was cutting a lot of corners because in the grand scheme, I was making more money than I ever had, you know, in my life, and growing up in a, you know, blue collar upbringing, it was great. But then when you get tossed into doing entrepreneurship full time, it's sink or swim, right? And you have no choice. And so, you know, it was a humbling experience looking at our numbers and going through things, and, you know, again, working really hard and only getting $3K back from the call center, right? Was just, again, it made us having to really, really focus in 2025 to make sure, like, we got to clean up these numbers. And
you got to be obsessed, dude.
Literally obsessed.
So they teach you this at Cardone Ventures as well, personalities.
Right.
So are you familiar with the DISC?
Not very familiar. I know of it. I've had to take in a few of them in the corporate world, but
yeah.
Please go on.
So DISC, there is 4 different personalities within everybody. Mm-hmm. Right. So you have a driver,
right,
an influencer, a stabilizer, and an analyzer.
I was an influencer is what my score was.
Yeah. So influencer is you're very persuasive. Mm-hmm. You're a salesperson. You're a chatty Cathy. Mm-hmm. You like to talk, right?
Yep, definitely.
Driver is you get an idea and you just like run through the walls, right? Until you tackle that, you ain't stopping.
Right.
Right. So for example, me, all driver and all influencer. Stabilizer is you like to listen, you like to deflate situations. You're a peacemaker.
Right.
That's what a stabilizer is. It's a peacemaker, right? You don't want problems. You just want to keep everybody cool and calm and collective. And you just like to listen, right? To solve problems. Mm-hmm. I'm not that at all.
Yeah, definitely.
An analyzer is somebody that pays attention to all the little details and tends to overthink everything, and they have a problem with taking action mm-hmm. because they're thinking about it so much and analyzing every little piece. That's my wife. My wife is an analyzer. So I didn't know this up until about maybe a year and a half ago. I started realizing this. I started learning and studying all the personalities of all my executives and my wife, and then me. They studied me. So now they know my type of personality. They know how to communicate with me. They know that if I'm quiet, I'm probably thinking of ideas that we're gonna go tackle.
Right.
They know that if I'm talking, they know that they should probably be listening because I'm gonna hold them accountable to making sure it gets done, right? And I'm just naturally, I like to just pump people up, you know? So it's good to understand your personality, because then you know like what's broken in your business too.
I was gonna say, how key, like how monumental was that when you started to emphasize the importance of knowing that from your team? Did you see a cause and effect of just naturally revenue numbers going up, or was it just maybe balance of
because you start using people, you start leveraging people's talents.
Right.
Like Lance, he's a revenue executive. I can get him to talk to the closers and pump them up and get them focused. Julia is my vice president. She's good at all of them.
Right.
Natalie is super high analyzer. So if there's a project that is really, really important, I make sure that she is looking at the operation side of it, every little detail, to make sure that they execute properly.
Right.
Because we don't want to miss anything. You know, so you start learning everybody's weaknesses and everybody's strengths, and you utilize them as such.
Correct.
You know. So what are your targets this year?
So, well, again, we laughed about this before because it's like, you know, I have these lofty goals, and I was driving the ship without really figuring out how I'm going to get there. I just said, you know, this year we wanted to get to $1 million, right? I just wanted to own a 7-figure business, right? That's what I said. Realistically, I think my wholesale business, our goal is to get to 500K, right? It's double our revenue. My brother also works a full-time job, so we kind of keep that operation pretty small, but the margins are great, right? We spend $3,500 to make, you know, on a deal, and we make 12 on average, right?
Yeah.
If we can just keep rinsing that engine going, it's a great business. But then the goal for DIY, right? We want to get to, we're doing about 40K a month right now in revenue. We want to get to 100. We really want to get to 100 as fast as possible. I think this year we could get to 750K based on just some of the trajectory that we have. But again, this is what we were laughing about before, right? Is just having that plan in place and knowing the exact to a T, which I know we'll probably talk about.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we're going to jump into right now is reverse engineering your target.
Right.
So if you don't have a target, if you don't have a goal, just shut your businesses down. Like,
Yeah, right.
what are you doing, bro? You're fucking going somewhere without a GPS.
Exactly.
And you've never been there. You don't know where it's located. I use that kind of exaggerated analogy sometimes with people to make them understand how important a target is. It's like, hey, bro, let's go to let's go to this town. Like, just pick a town, any town, right? Let's go to this town, and it's an hour and 45 minutes away. We're hopping in the car, okay? Let's go. What's the first thing you need to do? And they're like, well, I don't even know where this town is. Antelope, California. Where is that? Let's go to Antelope, California. They're like, well, where the fuck is that? We'll pull up the map. That's kind of what the target is, and then the target is the map, right?
Right.
It's the destination from that you're going to need to create a map on. So I preach this all the time. Your first $1 million will be made from marketing and sales. Mm-hmm. You already know that you have a market for it.
Right.
What is your client base? What are you going to focus on being your client base? I'll give you examples with us in our collection agency, NPG, the one I just launched a year ago, and we're already doing $150,000 a month in revenue. And I launched that a year ago. I have 2 managers, a collection manager here in the office with me in my headquarters, and a sales manager here in the office with me in my headquarters. Everyone else is virtual. They're all in Egypt, Latin America. You met Molly right now, my sales manager. She's a beast. We have about maybe 20 agents there in that business. And we're doing 150,000. This month we'll do 150,000. Last month we did 135. Before that we did 125. So we scale every month. Crazy. The consistency and exceeding last month's target is always the objective.
Right.
Just FYI. Okay. So what's your client base? Our client base is bail bonds. Right now we're starting to go after the dental industry because we know it's huge. So that's my ideal client. That's who we focus on. Trump just announced that he's going to be letting us collect student loans again.
Yep.
So who do you think I'm going after now as clients? Colleges and universities.
Right.
Oh, we're going to have a field day with these guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exciting times. So who is your client base?
Right. So right now the call center was built to serve real estate professionals, wholesalers, investors, brokers alike. The exciting piece now is that through that experience, right, we started with lead generation, and that's been our core focus for specifically real estate. Naturally, when you own a call center and it's completely ran by virtual assistants, you start getting, that VA world is so incestual, right? I'm sure you probably have, I know VAs that work for some of the biggest companies and vice versa. They all collaborate together. So we just started getting a really good brand on, an environment that was healthy and a thriving place for VAs to come and stay and find a home, right? So, but we had all this demand for roles and things that we couldn't satisfy, like for, administrative work, other things in systems, software development, marketing. And so we've now opened up in the last year a VA staffing company. It's called Easy Virtual Assistants, and that has now allowed us to start to build virtual operations, not just lead generation for real estate professionals, but now working with small, medium-sized business owners, growing businesses, anyone who really is looking to just grow a company with, hopefully not as much capital-intensive need to get started, and then also reducing complexity, right? Just having a nice virtual team, not as much overhead of things like offices and all this other jazz. So we've been building out and satisfying people in the space of medical sales now that we can help. We built out someone's Shopify store that's doing drop shipping, et cetera. So we're now, it's funny that you talked about how you're so excited branching out into new client bases. That's what we're discovering. We can serve so many more people. And I really do want to get out of this flooded space of real estate. It's crazy, man. It's a bloodbath. You know that. So it's like, it's an absolute bloodbath. Every month the market's changing. So it's like we will always have a niche in real estate. But I'm most excited about being able to serve, really anyone that's looking to
home services, man. I mean, I'm still considering opening up a call center myself for home services, but I'm just so caught up in collections right now and scaling that company. Like, I'm shooting for 100 million. I don't think I'm gonna have time for call center, bro. Like, I'm just not gonna have time to do cold calling, you know?
Right.
But what I would suggest is that you look into the home services space. So just imagine, you link up with a pest control company,
right,
and they have a huge presence in a certain city, and you know how to pull a list. You know where to skip trace it, dataskip.io.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And then you use your tools and you use your sales team to cold call. Imagine the impact that you could have. Roofing is another one. I've had so many roofers on the show just because I guess they're attracted to my show, and I'm attracted to that industry as well. Right. It's a huge industry. A lot
of
money.
My best friends works for a big, I wish I could remember it. My buddy Mitchell, he works for a big roofing company.
Dude,
but it's crazy.
Roofing is insane. Yeah. People don't even know how much roofers make. If you guys need a roof, you better be ready to pay, because those fools charge. So imagine, a roofing company does a job. They do a roof, and you pull a list in that neighborhood where they're doing that roof, and you skip trace it, and your cold calling team calls it, and you're calling and you're saying, hey, this is Mike with A1 Roofing. We're doing 123 Baseball Lane. That's your neighbor, John. Do you know him? Yeah, I know John at 123 Baseball Lane. He's on the other side of the block. Yeah, well, you see he's doing his roof, right? Yeah, we're doing that roof. We're just offering all the neighbors a courtesy free estimates. Fun fact, I've said this before on the show, when I was 15, from 15 to 18, well, no, not that long. From 15 to 17 years old, I did telemarketing and door-to-door sales for a home improvement company. I sold roofing, windows, and texture coating. So I know the game very well.
Yeah, you know it well. Yeah,
I know it very well. Yeah. And that was our pitch. We'd be like, I'd be knocking on the door. Hey, I'm Mike. Nice to meet you. You know John down the street, 123 Baseball Lane? You see that we're doing his roof? You see the sign? That's us. Hey, Steve is the owner. He just wants to give all the neighbors free courtesy. It's free estimate. It's good for a year. No obligation. Don't worry about it. We just want to give you a price so you know. Would you be more interested in a shingle roof or a tile roof? All the neighbors are doing tile, just so you know. And they're like, well, tile, shit, all right. I'll have Steve come over tomorrow at 3 o'clock. Cool, boom. Steve fucking closes them. And I get a little commission. I was 15 years old. So I know the game, right? But imagine that with all home services. You have pest control.
So much
You
more.
have roofing. You have painting, interior remodels. You call a zip code where the house average is over $1 million, and you're cold calling that whole community in there, and you're asking them if anybody needs any interior remodeling. We specialize in kitchens and bathrooms. Does anybody need a kitchen and bathroom remodeled in this house or in this neighborhood? And you're just blasting that neighborhood. So how do you get those clients? Just call them. You own a cold calling company.
Which is nuts, because again, the sale, as you know, to try to get someone to convince them to sell their house is really hard, especially in this market. It's like, we have the infrastructure. We already have the setup. It's as simple as getting a script, and we already have the data. Like, again, you talked about DataSkip. Best top, I'm not saying this because we're just on your podcast. It is, we have the reports to show it. It's our top performing skip trace provider month over month. We use 8 different providers, man. And so, like, we have the infrastructure and the best data to go after these.
It's not the cheapest. I'm not going to lie. I spend personally myself, I spend on average about $30,000 in my collection agency, skip tracing for my clients. By my clients, I mean these big debt buyers and these businesses that assign portfolios to my office for collections. I'm spending $30,000 a month in skip tracing. Like, I pay myself for quality.
Right.
So that data is huge.
It's the most important piece. And I didn't know we were going to get into data talk, but I'm glad we did, because I think that's one of the biggest mistakes that a lot of new investors make, is they try to cut corners. Naturally so, like when you don't have a lot of money, it's like you look at what it costs to get your lead gen campaigns going. Usually data is the most expensive piece if you do it right. So most wholesalers and new investors are like, I'm going to use some guy on Fiverr for 3 cents. I'm gonna use this person for 2 cents and 5 cents. Well, look at the cause and effect of that, right? You literally, the most important thing is getting in touch with that homeowner, that record. You built that list for a reason. Why the hell are you gonna go skip trace it with someone that's not gonna you're not even gonna get in touch with the right person, or they're just not gonna be super
You're gonna waste time and money calling disconnected and wrong numbers.
Exactly.
That's what got me frustrated when I first got into real estate.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, what your target is $1 million, right? What is your plan to get there? Like, I know you got to do $100,000 a month.
Correct.
Moving forward.
Yes.
Starting in May.
Yeah.
What is your plan of action to get to that revenue right now?
Yeah, so we got to acquire 3 clients a week. We got to acquire 3 clients a week at the price point of our services, roughly the average cost of spend right now. We need to acquire 3 clients a week, so 12 per month. That will get us to roughly above 100K. Yeah, right around just a little north of 100K a month.
So you've ran the metric targets. I think I might be one of the only people in the world that use these terms. I know there's a lot of business owners out there that you say metrics or targets.
Yeah.
I use them together.
Yeah.
I tell my team all the time here in collections, I say, what is our metric target? Metric target is how much money are you going to collect as an individual? How much are you going to contribute to the organization this week? $2,500. Okay. How many outbound calls do we need as an organization today? What is our metric target? And they're like, because it's a metric,
right,
and it's a target. So I call it a metric target. They say, well, Mike, Mr. CEO, boss man, we need 50,000 outbound calls today. Okay. What is our metric target of inbound calls today, team? And they're like, well, we need at least 2,500 inbound calls. And how much is that going to generate us? That's going to generate us $120,000 collected today.
Right.
What's the conversion? What's the percentage? Right? So I have metric targets. For everything in business, dude, targets, metric targets. So those are your metric targets. 4 clients a week, brand new clients a week, paying you $2,750 each average. Boom. Perfect. That'll get you to your target?
It will, and thankfully they are. What I love about our services, it's 3-month contracts, right? We're trying to get the MRR up a lot, and we're also introducing some low ticket, really trying to build this product-led growth strategy, right? We've always been high ticket, and then we've sort of introduced some, small things like a community and other stuff that we're trying to build the MRR up. Because I'm trying to learn from my wholesale business, which is you're only as good as your next deal, right? So I don't want that stress of just trying to like rinse and repeat clients all the time. So we're really building out more of like
retention.
Retention, yeah. We're trying to figure out our retention numbers. That's all, churn. It's a whole new thing that we're going after. So I think right now it's, we would be doing very well if we acquire 4 clients a week. Let's put it that way. We will definitely smash our numbers.
Yeah, dude. I mean, I know you talked about digital marketing with social media. You're using Meta. What else? So
we're doing Instagram marketing. We're doing Instagram ads and Facebook ads, so Meta ads right now. And then we made an investment into podcast appearances. You was lucky enough to be invited on the show, but we are making some investments in some paid placements, right, to get in, because our marketing before was all organic, a lot of referral based, and that was by necessity.
That's great, but it's too slow.
Too slow, way too slow. That's why people are like, dude, you've been around for 4 years. That's crazy. And it's like, yeah, I mean, we unfortunately we were using our own money. We didn't have any leverage to deal with. I had to fix my credit up with some poor decision making I did in my 20s. And so finally we're at this point now where it's like, all right, you got the demand. We're doing 40K a month for a reason. We need to get our message out to the masses. We need to get our audience bigger. We need to get leads coming in, because that's just been the biggest problem. And you can't build predictability without leads.
I get a lot of people reaching out to me, companies reaching out to me. Do I need cold callers for real estate? I get text messages, I get emails, I get calls. They're already doing it.
Right.
Companies are already doing it. Right. They're already reaching out. What they're not doing is they're not reaching out to other industries.
Right.
Cold calling other industries. Like
Correct.
We cold call bail bonds companies. You met Molly. She told you straight up, how we do it, what platforms we use, our secrets, right? So we cold call bail bonds companies. We just got into dental, and then we're going to be targeting colleges and universities to send us their delinquent accounts, their collections accounts. So my suggestion is, use your own recipe.
Absolutely.
Use your own cookbook to generate business. And to me, it's just getting aggressive. You're just getting aggressive. I had a friend of mine that would always say, like, Mike, I think I respect you. You've earned my respect at a high level because of how aggressive you are. And I was like, I don't know if that's a compliment or talking shit. I'm like, I'll take it as a compliment, bro. So yeah, I want to invite you back on the show in a year. I want to see where you're at with your targets. We know you did $500,000 last year.
Yep.
Roughly a little over $500,000. And we know that you're setting a goal to get $1 million. And we know that you got to be do you know what a healthy profit margin is for any business?
So this is just based off of stupid Google research, but I'm thinking
It should be based off your MBA.
Yeah, exactly. And that goes back to the beginning, which is be careful, kids, and you decide to go and pay for school and go to masterminds instead. But yeah, I think, it's an area that we need to definitely continue to keep building on for sure.
25%. So I see businesses that are like doing $1 million and they're at 10%. That's cute, 100K, that's fine. Okay. But if you're going to break,
right.
If you're at 10%, you're going to break. So if you're building up the business right now to do your first $1 million, you should probably also keep focused. We talked about finance. We'll leave that for another time.
Right.
But, keeping the finance part of your business monitored at all times to make sure that you're at least at a 25%. 25% is ideal.
Right.
20%, it's like you're not going to break anytime soon. You'll survive. But if you fall below 20, that's great, but you're going to break at some point if you don't figure out how to get your net up. So if you're going to do $1 million this year, my friend, make sure that you're at least 200K profit.
Yeah.
That's just my suggestion.
No, it's great. It's helpful.
So Kyle, thanks a lot again, dude, for flying out here.
Yeah, absolutely,
I really
Mike.
appreciate it.
I appreciate you having me
I
on.
made sure I was back from my trip in time for the show as well.
No, I appreciate that very much.
I'll see you back here in a year. Where can people find you?
Yeah, so we're very active on social media. The Kyle Connor on Instagram. Also, guys, I have a YouTube channel as well. We're putting a lot of content out right now and access to our community. And yeah, we're really just trying to right now help a lot of new business owners, small business owners. If you guys have, if you already have a business in place, we can help you immediately. Or if you're thinking about getting started in a business, we'd love to have the opportunity to sit down and help you guys really build out your operations and scale. Awesome, guys. So you got it right there. One more time, what's your IG handle? The Kyle Connor. The Kyle Connor. Send him a DM if you guys need any cold callers, any VAs. We use them. I have, 100 people overseas. But you have somebody right here that does exactly what I do. If you need them, leverage them. And guys, if you enjoyed the show, I need you to comment. Make sure you like, make sure you're already subscribed. And I'll see you guys next time on Mondays with Mike. Thanks. Woo. Good stuff, man.
Thank you, bro. Appreciate that.
Yeah. Let's do it, Javi. Let's do it.